in your notes, you have a factoring polynomial flowchart. This flowchart is going to be very helpful to you whenever you go to do your next project. Because in your next project, you're going to have to give me all kinds of different examples of these problems. This is going to help you a lot. So please pay attention and make sure you get your answers right. Now, always, when you are factoring, you are going to look for a greatest common factor. That is the first step. Then, when we go to factor, we've learned all kinds of different methods of factoring. And it boils down to how many terms do we need to factor. If I have two terms, I'm going to look to see if it is a difference of squares. Now remember, to be a difference of squares, one, it has to be a difference, and two, it all has to be perfect squares. If it's not, then it's just prime. But we're going to look for a difference of squares. In this case, I've got the x squared and 64. They're both perfect squares. It's a minus, so that's a difference. So I know one's going to be plus, one's going to be minus, because a plus and a minus, when we multiply them, that's what gives me that negative. So I've got x, 64 is just going to be 8 times 8. Here, I'm going to pull out a greatest common factor first. Now, in your project, it's going to ask you to give examples, and it's going to tell you that at least two of them have to have a greatest common factor. So what that means is this right here, where I have something that I can pull out first. In this case, I can pull out the 2n, which is going to leave me 9m squared here, and it's going to leave me n squared there. Once I've got to this, I notice I have a difference. I notice I have perfect squares, so I can factor this down farther. Remember, when you have a difference of squares, one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative, because that's how you get that difference. This will be 3m, and that will be n. So I've got 3m plus n, 3m minus n, and don't forget what you factored out. That greatest common factor also has to be included. Now, that's what happens if you have two terms. If you have three terms, then you're going to be factoring a trinomial. And this is where I say, what can I multiply to get c? To give me b. There are two types of trinomials. We have the regular one where there's no coefficient in the front, and we have our slip and slide ones where we do have a coefficient in the front. So let's just review different ways to solve these. In this case, I'm going to say, what can I multiply to get 42, not 72. To get 42, well, when I multiply that out, I'm going to have, notice this is a negative. For that to be a negative, one's got to be positive, one's got to be negative. I know this is x. This is a negative x here. So if I say 6 times 7 to get that 42, because that's negative, I know my 7 is going to have to be negative, because that has to, the negative 7 and the positive 6 will give me that negative 1. When we talk about having a greatest common factor first, that would be like this, where I can pull out a 2 out of this before I start. This would be an example with a greatest common factor. This is an example without a greatest common factor. So when you go to your project, be careful, because you're going to have to show greatest common factors on some of them. All right, once I've pulled this out, now I'm going to go ahead and factor this part. Remember, I'm going to leave that 2 there, because both of these are plus. I know both of these are plus. Got my W, and I'll say 5 times 5 is what's going to give me 25, because 5 plus 5 will give me my 10. So that's what it's going to look like when we have 3 terms this way. But what if we have that coefficient there? Then we got to use the slip and slide method. First, we always look for a greatest common factor. So here I can pull out a 3. So I'm going to have 3 times 10x squared minus 9x plus 2. I have this 10 here. I don't want that 10 here, so remember, I'm going to slide it over here and multiply it by that 2. So now I've got 3 times x squared minus 9x plus 20. So now I'm going to look for factors that can multiply to give me 20, that can add to give me 9. Because this is a negative, I know that's got to be a negative. And this is going to have to be two negatives because two negatives would multiply would give me a positive and added would give me a negative. So I am going to end up with x minus 5 and x minus 4. But I'm not finished. Remember in this case, because I multiplied this 10 over here, now I've got to divide by 10. So, and I told you could just simplify this here. So 5/10 is going to simplify to 1/2. So that's going to give me 1/2. I slide that 2 over. So I've got 3 times 2x minus 1. Here 4/10 is going to simplify to 2/5. So I'm going to slide that 5 over. That's going to give me 5x minus 2. So this is an example of a greatest common factor for your slip and slide method. All right, then we have grouping. We first look and see, is there something I can pull out of the first set and something I can pull out of the second set? In this case I can. So here I'm going to pull out 2a squared, which is going to leave me at a minus b. And here I am going to pull out 5. Oh, what did I do? Oh, I can't pull a 2 out. I can only pull an a squared out. That's what I did wrong. So let's look at this again. All right, in this case, I can pull out an a squared. I can't pull out a 2a squared because there's no 2 over there. A squared, that's going to give me a 2a. If I pull out a squared there, it's going to give me a minus b. Here, I'm going to pull out a 5. That's going to leave me a 2a there, minus b. These two are the same, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to take these two there on the outside. I'm going to put them together. A squared plus 5. And I'm going to bring that one down to a minus b. So we always look at the number of terms that we have. If we have 2 terms, we look and see if it's a difference of squares. If we have 3 terms, we look and see, can we factor it this way? Or does it have a coefficient that I can't factor out and then I have to use slip and slide? If it's got 4 terms, I'm going to look to see if I can group it to solve it. So on your project, you'll get this project on May 4th and you're going to have to make something. You're going to have to give me examples. Please go to your notes and use problems that they give you. Don't try to make up your own. Try to find ones that work. Use problems that we've given you and use those as your examples. So just remember, always look for a greatest common factor first. This is in your notes section. You have it blank and you have it filled in.